Well, this one's going to be a little bit different. You know, I recently just got back from a trip to Arizona. The desert's a beautiful place. It has some of the most stunning and vast scenes that you're ever going to find. It's also, in my opinion, the hardest type of landscape to paint is a desert scene. With that being said, I was curious, what can I learn from photography? Because that's how you go and collect your reference image, unless you're going to bring your easel, which most of us don't do very often. So what can we learn as artists from photography? Well, that brings me to our sponsor, which is Blazar Lenses, and they sent me over a beautiful 85mm anamorphic lens to try out. I ended up taking this lens with me to Arizona. I shot a bunch of videos, and I pulled out a bunch of still images from the video that I could use as a reference. In fact, I've selected the best ones, and I'm going to give them to you for free, so I'll link that down in the description below. Now, these images I'm giving to you in order for you to, use as references and whatnot, make your own paintings of them and use them as reference however you see fit. Now, if you're much of a landscape photographer, you'll notice that an 85mm is not a common size. I chose this size because I like the idea of getting a lot of background compression for the sake of learning in this video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's that blurry and out of focus area in the background. And that's what I'm going to try to replicate in my painting. So you don't see that normally with your eyes. You just everything's more or less in focus. You do have out of focus areas, but it's not extreme like on an 85mm lens. Now, as you're looking at these reference photos, just look at the gorgeous characteristics of this lens. To me, this is one of the most artistic, if not the most artistic lens that you can get your hands on. In addition to that, this is anamorphic. And so it does that Hollywood movie squeeze, which is so cool. Those black bars that you see, that's not cropping. I didn't crop it. That's just the format of the lens. So if you like these reference photos and you like the characteristics of these lenses, I'm going to link their website in the description. It'll be the first link in the description. Hopefully you go check it out. Again, I've actually bought these before with my own money. It's nice that they send them to me, but I'm a paid customer before they ever sent them to me. And I legitimately love these lenses, my favorite lenses that you can buy, in my opinion. All right, with all that out of the way, let's go paint. So you can see I've got a wooden panel, and that's because I wanted it long and skinny so I could do a custom size. This is a masonite panel, and I've cut it to size. I'm not really worried about the rough edges because I can frame it. Now, I've selected one of the pictures there, and I'm going to share all of the pictures that I have from this, from the test that I did with this lens. I'm going to share those images with you, and you can do your own paintings from any of them or combine them together, whatever you'd like to do. But I found one that I'd like to paint. I'm going to start with kind of a faded blue sky, not too bright, just enough to show, okay, this is, maybe about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's about the time this was probably taken in reality. There you go. So I'll just feather that sky in. I'm going to allow that to dry. I'm actually going to be doing mixed media today. So I'm going to do some acrylic. I'll stop and I'll get my oils out and we'll finish the painting. So I think that'll be fun. Now I've got a purpley tone here. I'm going to paint in some of my background mountains. You can see I spent a moment or two just creating a basic sketch here on the canvas. And what I'm going to do is, just like my reference photo, I'm going to create that blurriness, very blurry, like a photo. Not so much like a paint, a little bit more like a photo than a painting, you know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out what can I gain here? What can we learn from the way cameras and lenses see nature versus our own eyes? Is there that artistic flair that we could add to our paintings? That's what I'm playing around with here. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this in, and then I'm going to feather it or fuzz it out just a little bit. Before we go too much further, let's thank our Patreon members. So if you're not a member on Patreon, I just want to encourage you to at least go check it out. Hopefully you'll find something there that could be useful to you. Now I've got this greenish gray color, and I'm using really the lack of texture on my panel board to my advantage as I lay down just a little bit of this paint and I allow it to kind of flow up and around I'm not copying the picture exactly. I'm using it as inspiration and trying to capture that look of distance, that look of distance, you know, through the camera lens, or, you know, it's just like extra, more blurry than I would normally paint a background. I think that it will be very interesting. We're gonna give it a try. There we go, boom. As you can see, you know, it just gives it a totally different look. Now, being that this is mixed media, I'm leaving myself plenty of space to come back and paint over top of this. But at this moment, the most important thing is that I do not have hard edges. I don't want hard edges. So there you have it. Yeah, I can live with that. Up in here, let me do the same thing. Just going to go ahead and, you know, it's not totally filled in. I just place down color quickly here. But I'm gonna just begin to work these desert colors in and around. Boom, just like so. You can always take your little mister bottle and hit that area. It'll help paint to flow. Now I'm just continuing to place in background colors of kind of the same kind, really. And I'm just scumbling this in. You can see I've already squirted some water up here, and my paint's actually beginning to run, and that's okay. That is okay. I want this to be very, very smudgy, very soft. And in fact, I may just very delicately put a little bit more water on there. I'm looking to have this just a very blurry, fuzzy edge, like so. You can go through this a couple of times if you need to, in order to build it up the way that you want it, depending on how blurry you want that background. I want mine fairly blurry. Fairly blurry. Dry brush, and just come in and feather it. The water-based acrylics, I don't mind getting my fingers messy. Look at that. You see how we're beginning to create the feel of that out-of-focus desert area. Now, even the swirl cactus that I'm painting right here is going to be a little bit out of focus. It's going to be glowing. It's not going to be as out of focus as some of these areas, which I can make even more out of focus with my oil layers if I want to. I can take some of these same colors and smudge them in there, and that'll give the illusion of more of an out of focus pocket. But let me just go ahead and get this just built in here, like so, using a number 4 bristle brush because it kind of lends itself to fuzzier edges versus a synthetic brush. It's a good color. I think it's not the only color that I want in there. I want just a little bit of maybe a more of a darker green, a bluish green almost in there. There we go. It's a beautiful time to go to the desert when it's kind of winter, you know. It's winter in the desert and it's all green. It's very pretty, very pretty. It gives you a false sense of security. And give it about a month and it all goes straight back to crazy hot and brown. There you go. But the 1 month of winter is nice in the desert. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in a few branches and sticks to these desert bushes here. And I'll do several of them kind of dark like this. You could use a liner brush, but you know, this is working fine. The angle filbert or dagger brush. There we go. That totally works. And it just creates a little bit of this contrast against some of the blurry edges here. And now I do need to still blur this, feather that out just a little. So I'm going to do that before it dries. I don't want this too sharp. Again, trying to keep the sharpness for my one and only thing that's going to be in focus, which is my cactus on this side. But over on this corner, I don't really want anything in focus. A little bit closer, so a little sharper, but still not totally in focus. This is really an interesting painting. Deserts are probably the hardest kind of landscape to paint. In my opinion, they certainly are. And this is interesting to watch it develop, isn't it? It'll be fun to change over to the oils here pretty soon. Now I'm adding a few fuzzy, you know, details here, some softness. I don't want it, again, too sharp yet. I'm just adding some of these highlights to this little scrubby bush. There, not so much that it comes too forward, because this is somewhere about the same plane as this cactus here. And then I'll put my larger cactus right on top of that. So I don't want too distinct. We'll just have a nice soft bush back there. I've really got no idea what this variety of cactus is, but I've got a picture of it, so I'm able to just replicate it. And right now I'm doing all of the outer thorns with a flat brush. This is the one that's going to be in focus the most in the painting. Those thorns are fairly long. If you actually look at them, they protrude quite a good ways out. So I'm going to be sure that I replicate that there. I'm starting with my microfilbert pulled to a nice sharp chisel edge, and what that allows me to do is just to touch it with that chiseled edge and kind of get these thorns pretty quickly, very sharp, like so. Pretty sharp, you know what I mean though. The idea is they need to be very much in focus. There we go. I'm just going to continue on and on like that. I'm going to probably need to get my liner brush out in order to get the exact effect that I want. But you know what? For now, we'll just go with this. Get a few of them in, then I'll go ahead and grab my liner brush. Finally beginning to come together. This particular cactus has taken a little longer than I thought it would, but I don't have to do too much with our oils. Remember, this is a mixed media painting, and I am going to kind of do a final highlight. The reason I'm going to do it in oils, I think it'll allow me to keep it a little smudgier, but I like this nice and sharp. I'm going to do most of this with acrylics. The idea of a mixed media is not to totally cover up what you've done anyways, so I think that'll be fine. I'm really just using my reference photo to kind of figure out, okay, how does this need to look? I want it to have a fair amount of detail. I'll put some shadowy thorns in. I'm mostly working in the highlights and midtones. I'll do my shadows last. That just usually works out pretty well. Now I've changed to oils and my acrylic base tone is completely dry. Obviously this is acrylic and oils on top. You cannot reverse that order. It doesn't work. So I'm going to take, and of course I just got the tiniest amount of paint. Really you should be using like a paper plate or something like that. I just grabbed this palette so that it would be very, very obvious that I've changed, you know, to oils. But I'm going to now just strengthen my highlights with oil. And finally, I don't have to get in with my finger and blend it quickly. I might take like a brush or something and I might blend it, but I don't need to rush, which is nice. I've been, you know, having to put it down and wipe it just as quick as I put it down, but I don't have to do that anymore because the oils won't dry. It'll be wet all day. I can come back and make adjustments. There we go. Boom. So anyway, I don't need to do a lot here, but I'm just going to strengthen the highlight on this, see how it's glowing, and then I'm going to come back and allow this background to glow just a little bit more. Let me go ahead and strengthen some of the light in this cactus here. Just again, kind of some of the fuzziness can be achieved with oil. So here you can see is one of the very last things that I want to accomplish on this painting is placing in some of these better highlights here. Just right in this section where I think it would be very pretty, and a little bit up here too. I can do some more of that later. Then I come along with a dry brush. Of course, this one being my older brush, it's a bit worn out because I'm going to scrub with it and just create softness. There we go. So anyway, I'm going to just continue with that, working back and forth till I get this landscape, the middle ground area, very blurry, but highlighted enough, you know, with enough light. So again, this is blurry compared to normal because I'm using the lens effect, the blur of the lens, you know, is kind of what I'm trying to replicate here and creating even more depth than you would normally see in a painting or see with your eyes. It's a little different. And that's what we're just focusing on today, is the depth and the blur and, you know, the look of the lens. That's cool. Now I'm going to wrap up by adding a little bit of brush, you know, some scrubby bush or something just to this side. And that helps to keep the eye from flying off. This side looks okay, fairly balanced. This side just needed an eye stopper because with that cactus being here, I don't like that gap. So I'm filling in just so I have some sort of a stopper and also keeping that fairly dark. Between those two things, I'm hoping that makes the painting more balanced or just makes it flow better. A little bit of purple in here won't hurt anything. That's the one problem with photos. You never get the perfect composition, really, in my opinion. Never get the perfect composition for a painting. And this is just one example. All right, well, that wraps up our painting for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Remember to subscribe if you're not already, and click the like button. It helps me out a lot. Stick around, watch a couple more videos, and stay inspired.